The day Denise got the keys to her new apartment, she stood in the empty living room and cried. Not sad tears. Happy ones. The kind that come when you have been working towards something for so long that you almost forgot what it felt like to want it. She was 31 years old. She had spent the last 8 years working as a nurse at the county hospital. Double shifts, night shifts, holiday shifts, the kind of work that leaves you too tired to dream. But she had saved every penny she could. And now she was standing in a 2-bedroom apartment in one of the nicest complexes in the city, Willowbrook Gardens. The name alone sounded like something from a magazine. The apartment had big windows that let in morning light. It had a balcony where she could drink her coffee and watch the sun come up. It had a gym downstairs and a business center with free printing. But the thing Denise was most excited about was the pool. Growing up, she never had access to a pool. Her family lived in a part of town where public pools were either closed down or too crowded to enjoy. She learned to swim in college. During a physical education class, she almost skipped. Now, swimming was the one thing that helped her relax. After a 12-hour shift of running between patients, holding hands with people who were scared, and making decisions that sometimes meant life or death, the water was the only place where her mind went quiet. So on her first Saturday in the new apartment, she put on her swimsuit, grabbed a towel, and walked down to the pool. It was a beautiful day. The sky was blue and clear, and the pool sparkled like something out of a commercial. There were a few other residents there. A couple reading books on lounge chairs, a man doing laps, a woman watching her kids splash in the shallow end. Denise found a chair in the corner, spread out her towel, and smiled. This was her life now. She had earned this. She swam for about an hour that day. Nobody bothered her. Nobody even looked at her twice. She floated on her back and stared up at the sky and felt, for the first time in a long time, like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. The second weekend was the same. She came down around noon, swam her laps, and read a book by the water. A woman from the building next to hers waved at her and said, "Hello?" Denise waved back. It felt good to be part of a community. She thought maybe she would make some friends here. Maybe she would finally have the kind of life she had always imagined. But on the third Saturday, everything changed. Denise walked down to the pool like she always did. She had her bag over her shoulder, her sunglasses on, and a new book she had been excited to start. She swiped her key fob at the gate and heard the familiar click. But before she could push it open, a voice stopped her. "Excuse me." She turned around. A man was standing a few feet behind her. He was maybe in his mid-50s, with gray hair and a polo shirt tucked into his khaki shorts. He had the kind of face that looked like it was always frowning, even when it was not. "Can I help you?" Denise asked. The man looked her up and down. Not in a friendly way. More like he was studying her. Trying to figure something out. "Do you live here?" he asked. Denise blinked. The question caught her off guard. She had just used her key fob to open the gate. Why would someone who did not live here have a working key fob? "Yes," she said. "I live in Building B, Unit 4B. The man did not move. He just kept looking at her like he was waiting for her to confess to something. "I have never seen you before," he said. "I just moved in 3 weeks ago," Denise replied. She kept her voice calm, even though something uncomfortable was starting to twist in her stomach. The man crossed his arms. "We have had problems with non-residents sneaking into the pool? Using other people's fobs? That kind of thing?" Denise felt her jaw tighten. She understood what was happening now. She had heard stories like this from friends, from coworkers, from strangers on the internet. She had just never thought it would happen to her. Not here. Not in a place she had worked so hard to afford. "I did not sneak in," she said slowly. "I live here. I just showed you my fob." "Anyone can borrow a fob," the man said. "I am just trying to protect the community." For a moment, Denise did not know what to say. Part of her wanted to argue. Part of her wanted to walk away. Part of her wanted to scream. But she had been through enough in her life to know that none of those things would help. So she took a deep breath and made a decision. She reached into her bag and pulled out her phone. She opened her photo album and scrolled to a picture of her lease agreement. She turned the screen toward the man. "Here," she said. "My name, my unit number, my move-in date. Is that enough proof for you?" The man glanced at the screen, then looked away. He did not apologize. He did not say he was wrong. He just shrugged and muttered something under his breath. "I'm just looking out for the neighborhood," he said again. Then he turned and walked back to his lounge chair on the other side of the pool, where a woman who looked like his wife was waiting. They whispered to each other and looked in her direction. Denise stood there for a long moment. Her hands were shaking, but she refused to let it show. She walked to a chair on the opposite end of the pool, as far from the man as she could get. She spread out her towel and sat down, but she could not relax. Every time she looked up, she could feel his eyes on her, watching, waiting, like he was hoping she would do something wrong so he could prove he was right. She tried to read her book, but the words blurred together. She tried to swim, but every stroke felt heavy. The water that usually made her feel free now made her feel trapped. After 20 minutes, she gave up. She packed her things and walked back to her apartment. She did not cry. She did not yell. She just sat on her couch and stared at the wall. This was supposed to be her place. Her home, the reward for all those years of hard work. And in less than 10 minutes, a stranger had made her feel like she did not belong. That night, she called her mother and told her what happened. Her mother sighed. It was a tired sigh, the kind that comes from a lifetime of similar stories. "Some people are never going to see you for who you are," her mother said. "They are only going to see what they want to see. But that does not mean you stop showing up. You paid for that apartment. You earned that pool. Do not let anyone take that from you." Denise listened. She knew her mother was right. But knowing something and feeling something are two different things. And right now, all she felt was tired. She told herself it was a one-time thing. A bad day. An isolated incident. She had no idea that it was only the beginning. Denise told herself she would not let one bad experience ruin everything she had worked for. She spent the whole week thinking about what her mother said. She paid her rent. She had every right to use that pool. And she was not going to let some stranger with a bad attitude take that away from her. So when Saturday came around again, she put on her swimsuit, grabbed her towel, and walked back down to the pool. Her heart was beating a little faster than usual, but she ignored it. She was not going to hide in her apartment like she had done something wrong. When she got to the gate, she paused for just a second. She looked through the fence to see who was there. A few kids were playing in the shallow end. An older woman was reading a magazine under an umbrella. And there, sitting on two lounge chairs right next to the entrance, was the man from last week. But this time he was not alone. A woman sat beside him. She had short blonde hair and sunglasses pushed up on her head. She was wearing a floral swimsuit cover-up and gold sandals. The way she sat, with her back straight and her chin lifted, made her look like she was in charge of something important. Denise took a breath. She swiped her fob and pushed open the gate. The moment she stepped inside, both of them looked up. The man whispered something to the woman. The woman nodded slowly, like she had been expecting this. Denise walked past them without saying a word. She found a lounge chair on the far side of the pool, away from everyone else. She set down her bag and started spreading out her towel. Maybe today would be different. Maybe they would just leave her alone. She was wrong. Before she could even sit down, the man was walking toward her. The woman followed a few steps behind, her arms crossed over her chest. "Excuse me," the man said. His voice was louder this time. Loud enough that other people around the pool looked up. Denise turned to face him. "Yes, I'm going to need to see some ID," he said. He was not asking. He was demanding. Denise felt a flash of heat rise up her neck. "I showed you my lease last week. I live here." "That was last week," the woman said, stepping forward. Her voice was sharp, like she had been practicing this. "We have rules here. We have a responsibility to make sure only residents use the amenities." "I am a resident," Denise said. She kept her voice steady, even though her hands wanted to shake. I live in Unit 4B. I moved in a month ago. The woman tilted her head. Then you would not mind showing us your ID, just to be safe. Denise stared at her. She looked around the pool. The older woman with the magazine was watching now. The parents of the kids in the pool had stopped talking. Everyone was looking, but no one was saying anything. Do you ask everyone for their ID? Denise asked. Or just me? The man's face turned red. We are not doing anything wrong. We are just trying to protect the community. There have been break-ins, people sneaking in who do not belong. I belong here, Denise said. Her voice cracked just a little, and she hated herself for it. She did not want to show them that this was getting to her. But it was. Of course it was. The woman leaned in closer. If you really live here, then proving it should not be a problem. Unless you have something to hide? That was the moment Denise made a decision. She was not going to stand here and be interrogated like a criminal. She was not going to beg these people to believe her. She was going to protect herself. She reached into her bag and pulled out her phone. She opened the camera and hit record. What are you doing? The man asked. His eyes went wide. I am recording this, Denise said calmly. For my own safety. The woman stepped back like the phone was a weapon. You cannot do that. That is illegal. You do not have permission to record us. This is a shared amenity space, Denise replied. I have every right to record in a public area. And I want a record of what is happening here in case I need it later. The man pointed his finger at her. Turn that off right now. I am warning you. Warning me about what? Denise asked. She did not raise her voice. She did not step closer. She just held the phone steady and kept recording. The man looked like he wanted to say something else, but the woman grabbed his arm. She pulled him back a few steps and whispered something in his ear. He clenched his jaw, glared at Denise one more time, and then turned around. The two of them walked back to their lounge chairs and sat down, but they did not leave. Denise stood there for a moment, her phone still in her hand. Her heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. She wanted to leave. Every part of her body was telling her to just go back to her apartment and forget about the pool forever, but she did not. She sat down on her lounge chair, put her phone back in her bag, and picked up her book. Her hands were trembling, but she forced herself to turn the pages anyway. She stayed for an hour. She did not swim. She could not relax. But she stayed. Because leaving would have meant they won, and she was not going to give them the dot. The whole time, the man and the woman watched her. They whispered to each other. They looked at her and then looked away. At one point, the man pulled out his own phone and started typing something. Denise tried not to think about what he might be doing. When she finally packed up her things to leave, the older woman with the magazine caught her eye. She gave Denise a small nod. It was not much. She did not say anything. She did not stand up for her. But it was something. A tiny crack in the silence. Denise walked back to her apartment and locked the door behind her. She sat on her couch and finally let herself breathe. Her hands were still shaking. Her stomach was in knots. But she had done it. She had stayed. That night, she watched the video she recorded. She saw herself standing there, calm and quiet, while two strangers demanded to see her ID for no reason other than the fact that they decided she did not belong. She saved the video to her cloud storage. Just in case, she did not know if she would need it. She hoped she would not. But something in her gut told her this was not over. She thought about calling her mother again, but she did not want to worry her. She thought about reporting the incident to the apartment management, but she was not sure they would take her seriously. She thought about a lot of things that night, lying in bed and staring at the ceiling. What had she done wrong? Nothing. She had followed every rule. She had shown her lease. She had stayed calm. And still, these people treated her like she was a threat. She wondered how many other people had gone through the same thing. How many had just given up and stopped using the pool altogether? How many had moved out because they got tired of being watched and questioned and made to feel like outsiders in their own home. Denise was not going to be one of them. She had worked too hard and come too far, but she also knew something else. The man had been typing on his phone. He had looked angry when he walked away. People like that do not just let things go. They find other ways to make their point. She had a feeling next Saturday was going to be different. She just did not know. How right she was. The week that followed was one of the longest of Denise's life. Every day at work she thought about what had happened at the pool. Every night at home she replayed the conversation in her head. The way they looked at her. The way they spoke to her. The way everyone else just sat there and watched. She almost did not go back that Saturday. She woke up early and lay in bed for an hour, staring at the ceiling, trying to decide what to do. Part of her said it was not worth the stress. Part of her said she should just find a gym with a pool somewhere else. Part of her said maybe it would be easier to just give up, but then she thought about her mother. She thought about all the times her mother had been told she did not belong somewhere. All the times she had been made to feel small. And she thought about what her mother always said. You do not stop showing up. You do not let them win. So Denise got out of bed. She put on her swimsuit. She grabbed her towel and her book and her bag. As she walked down to the pool, when she got to the gate, she felt her stomach tighten. She looked through the fence, expecting to see the man and his wife sitting there like guards. But they were not there. The pool area was quiet. Just a few people scattered around, enjoying the morning sun. No one watching. No one waiting. Denise let out a breath she did not know she had been holding. Maybe they had finally gotten tired of bothering her. Maybe they had realized they were wrong. Maybe today would just be a normal day. She swiped her fob and walked inside. She found a lounge chair near the deep end and set down her things. The water looked beautiful, clear and blue and calm. She could already feel the tension in her shoulders. Starting to ease, she walked to the edge of the pool and slipped into the water. It was cool against her skin, and for a moment everything else disappeared. No stress. No worry. No fear. Just the quiet sound of water moving around her. She swam a few laps, slow and steady, letting her body relax. Then she floated on her back and closed her eyes. The sun was warm on her face. The world felt peaceful. This was what she had been missing. This was why she had worked so hard. She had been in the water for maybe 15 minutes when she heard the gate open. At first, she did not think anything of it. People came and went all the time. But then she heard voices, low and serious. Official sounding. She opened her eyes and looked toward the entrance. Her heart stopped. 2 police officers were walking through the gate. And right behind them, pointing directly at her, was the man from the last 2 weekends. That is her, the man said. His voice was loud and full of certainty. She is the one. She has been trespassing. Denise felt the world tilt. For a moment she could not move. She could not think. She just floated there in the water, watching as the officers walked toward the edge of the pool. One of them was young, maybe in his late 20s. He had a serious face but kind eyes. The other was older, with gray hair and a stern expression. He stood with his arms crossed, watching her like she was already guilty of something. "Ma'am," the younger officer said, "we received a call about a trespassing complaint. Could you step out of the pool, please?" Denise's mind raced. She had done nothing wrong. She lived here. She had proof. But none of that mattered in this moment. All that mattered was that she was standing in a pool in her swimsuit while 2 police officers looked down at her and a man she barely knew accused her of being a criminal. She swam slowly to the edge of the pool. She did not rush. She did not panic. She kept her movements calm and deliberate. Even though every part of her wanted to scream, she pulled herself out of the water and stood on the concrete, dripping wet. Everyone at the pool was watching now. The families, the couples, the older woman with the magazine. No one said a word. The silence was so heavy it felt like a weight pressing down on her chest. "I live here," Denise said. Her voice came out steady, even though her heart was pounding. "Unit 4B, I have been a resident for over a month." The man stepped forward. She is lying. I have never seen her before a few weeks ago. She does not belong here. Sir, the younger officer said, holding up his hand, please let us handle this. The older officer looked at Denise. Do you have any identification? Something that proves you live here? Denise nodded. She walked over to her lounge chair, very aware of how vulnerable she felt, wet, exposed, being watched by everyone. She picked up her bag and pulled out her phone. Her hands were shaking, but she forced them to be still. She opened her photos and found the picture of her lease. Then she pulled up her driver's license. She handed the phone to the older officer. He looked at the screen for a long moment. He zoomed in. He scrolled. Then he looked up at her and something in his expression shifted. It was small, but she saw it. A flicker of something that might have been embarrassment. He turned to the man. Sir, this woman is a resident. Her name is on the lease. Her address matches the unit she mentioned. The man's face went red. That does not mean anything. She could have faked those documents. She could have borrowed someone else's key fob. I am telling you, she does not belong here. The younger officer stepped in. Sir, we have verified her residency. There is no evidence of trespassing. This complaint is unfounded. Unfounded? The man's voice rose. I have been watching her for weeks. She shows up out of nowhere and suddenly I'm the bad guy? I am just trying to protect my community. Denise stood there, water still dripping from her body, and watched this man argue with two police officers about whether she had the right to exist in her own home. It was surreal. Like a bad dream she could not wake up from. The older officer handed her phone back to her. Ma'am, I apologize for the inconvenience. You are free to continue using the pool. But Denise did not feel free. She felt humiliated. She felt exposed. She felt like everyone at that pool was looking at her and seeing exactly what the man wanted them to see. A problem. A threat. Someone who did not belong. The officers turned to leave. The man stood there, his fists clenched at his sides, his face twisted with frustration. His wife had appeared now, standing near the gate, watching everything with wide eyes, and in that moment something inside Denise shifted. She had spent weeks being polite, being patient, being calm. She had done everything right, and it had not mattered. They had still called the police on her. They had still tried to humiliate her in front of everyone. She was done being quiet. She was done swallowing her anger to make other people comfortable. She was done pretending this was okay. The officers were almost at the gate when she spoke. Wait, she said. Her voice was louder now, strong, clear. I have something to say. Everyone turned to look at her. The officers. The man, his wife. Every single person at that pool. Denise took a deep breath, and then she said exactly what she had been holding inside for weeks. The pool had gone completely silent. Even the children in the shallow end had stopped splashing. Everyone was watching. Everyone was waiting. The two officers stood near the gate, half-turned, looking back at Denise. The man stood frozen near his lounge chair, his wife a few steps behind him. And Denise stood at the edge of the pool, water still dripping down her legs, her heart beating so hard she could feel it in her throat. She had spent her whole life being careful, being polite, being the kind of person who kept her head down and worked hard and never made a scene. But there comes a moment when staying quiet stops being the safe choice. There comes a moment when silence becomes its own kind of damage. This was that moment. Officer, Denise said, looking directly at the younger one. Before you leave, I want to make sure something is on record. The officer nodded slowly. Go ahead, ma'am. Denise turned to face the man. He was standing about 15 feet away, his arms crossed, his jaw tight. His wife had moved closer to him now, her hand on his arm like she was ready to pull him away. This is the third Saturday in a row that this man has harassed me, Denise said. Her voice was calm, but firm. She was not yelling, she was not crying, she was simply stating facts. The first week he stopped me at the gate and demanded to see my key fob. When I showed it to him, he asked which unit I lived in. When I told him, he said he had never seen me before and watched me the entire time I was here. I left after 20 minutes because I could not relax. The man opened his mouth to speak, but Denise kept going. The second week, he came back with his wife. They sat right by the entrance like they were waiting for me. When I walked in, they demanded to see my ID. They said they were protecting the community. They said there had been break-ins. When I started recording the conversation for my own safety, they threatened me and told me I was not allowed to film them. The wife's face went pale. She looked around at the other residents who were all staring at her now. And today, Denise continued, this man called the police on me while I was swimming in a pool that I pay to use, in an apartment complex where I have lived for over a month. She paused and let the words settle. The silence was so thick you could almost touch it. I have done nothing wrong, Denise said. I have followed every rule. I have shown my key fob. I have shown my lease. I have shown my ID, and still, this man has decided that I do not belong here. She took a step toward him, not aggressive, not threatening, just close enough that he could not look away. So I want to ask you something, she said, right here, right now, in front of these officers and everyone else at this pool. The man swallowed hard. His wife tugged at his arm, but he did not move. What is it about me that made you think I was trespassing? Denise asked. Was it the way I was dressed? Was it the book I was reading? Was it the way I swam my laps? What exactly did I do that made you decide I did not belong here? The man's face twisted. He looked angry and embarrassed at the same time. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. Because I have been thinking about it all week, Denise continued. I have been trying to figure out what I did wrong, and the only thing I can come up with is that you looked at me and made a decision before I even said a word. You decided who I was before you knew anything about me. The older woman with the magazine set down her book. A man near the deep end shook his head slowly. A mother pulled her children closer to her, not out of fear, but out of something that looked like shame. I work 60 hours a week, Denise said. I am a nurse at the county hospital. I take care of people who are sick and scared and sometimes dying. I hold their hands when their families cannot be there. I make decisions that sometimes mean the difference between life and death. And then I come home to this place that I work so hard to afford, and I am treated like a criminal for trying to swim in my own pool. Her voice cracked just a little on the last word. She hated that. She did not want to show weakness. But maybe it was not weakness. Maybe it was just the truth. I am not asking for special treatment, she said. I am not asking for an apology. I am just asking for the same thing everyone else at this pool gets. The right to exist here without being questioned, without being watched, without having the police called on me for doing absolutely nothing wrong. She turned back to the officers. The younger one looked uncomfortable. The older one had uncrossed his arms and was watching her with something that might have been respect. I want this documented, Denise said. I want a record that this man has harassed me 3 times. I want it noted that he called the police on a resident who had every right to be here. And I want to know what my options are if this continues. The younger officer nodded. Ma'am, you have every right to file a formal harassment complaint. If this behavior continues, there could be legal consequences. He looked at the man when he said that last part. The man's face went white. This is ridiculous, the wife finally said. Her voice was shaky, like she was trying to sound confident but failing. We were just trying to protect the neighborhood. We did not mean any harm, Denise turned to look at her. You called the police on me for swimming. You do not get to decide whether that caused harm. I do. The wife had no response. She looked down at the ground and said nothing. Denise picked up her towel and wrapped it around her shoulders. She was done. She had said what she needed to say. Now she just wanted to go home and breathe. But before she left, she looked around at all the people who had been watching. The families, the couples, the neighbors she had never spoken to. They had all seen what happened. They had all heard what she said, and not one of them had looked away. I am not going anywhere, Denise said. Not to anyone in particular. Just out loud for everyone to hear. I live here. I belong here. And I'm going to keep showing up. Every Saturday, every Sunday, whenever I want. Because this is my home too. She walked toward the gate. The officers stepped aside to let her pass. As she walked by the man, she stopped for just a second. She did not look at him. She did not need to. I hope you find whatever it is you are really looking for, she said quietly. Because it is not here, and it is not me. Then she walked out of the pool area and did not look back. The man stood there, surrounded by neighbors who were now looking at him differently. His wife whispered something about going inside. He did not move. He just stood there, staring at the ground, while the world he thought he controlled shifted beneath his feet. Denise walked back to her apartment. Her hands were shaking. Her eyes were burning. But she did not cry, not yet. She had held it together for too long to fall apart now. She unlocked her door, stepped inside, and closed it behind her. Then she leaned against the wall and let out a breath that felt like it had been trapped inside her for weeks. She had done it. She had stood up for herself. She had said the things she had been too scared to say, done now. Finally, people had listened. Denise did not leave her apartment for the rest of that day. She sat on her couch with the curtains closed and let herself feel everything she had been pushing down for weeks. The anger, the sadness, the exhaustion. She cried for a while. Not because she was weak, but because she was human. And sometimes being human means letting the tears come. That night, she finally called her mother and told her everything. Her mother listened without interrupting. When Denise finished, there was a long pause on the other end of the line. I am proud of you, her mother said. Her voice was thick with emotion. I am so proud of you. Denise closed her eyes. Those words meant more to her than she could explain. Her mother had spent her whole life fighting battles like this. Quiet battles. Invisible battles. The kind that wear you down slowly, one small cut at a time. And now Denise had fought one of her own. I do not know what happens next, Denise admitted. I do not know if anything will change. Something already changed, her mother said. You changed it. You stood up for yourself. You made them see you. That matters, baby. That matters more than you know. Denise went to bed that night feeling lighter than she had in weeks. She did not know what the future held, but she knew one thing for certain. She was not going to hide anymore. The next morning, there was a knock at her door. She was not expecting anyone. She looked through the peephole and saw an older man standing in the hallway. He had white hair and a kind face. She recognized him from the pool. He was the one who had been reading a newspaper the first time the man had confronted her. She opened the door slowly. Can I help you? The man smiled, but it was a sad smile, the kind that comes with an apology. My name is Walter, he said. I live in Unit 6A. I just wanted to come by and say that I am sorry. Denise blinked. Sorry for what? For not saying anything sooner, Walter said. He looked down at his shoes for a moment, then back up at her. I saw what was happening. I saw how he was treating you. And I did not speak up. I told myself it was not my business. I told myself someone else would handle it. But that was wrong. I should have said something. I should have stood beside you. Denise did not know what to say. She had not expected this. She had expected silence. She had expected people to pretend nothing had happened. But here was this man standing at her door telling her he was sorry. Thank you, she said softly. That means a lot. Walter nodded. If anything like that ever happens again, you come find me. I will stand with you. I promise. He turned and walked back down the hallway. Denise closed the door and stood there for a moment, her hand still on the handle. Something warm spread through her chest. Something that felt like hope. Over the next few days, more neighbors came by. A young couple from the second floor brought her a bottle of wine and a card that said they were sorry for what she had been through. An older woman named Ruth, the one who had been reading the magazine at the pool, stopped her in the parking lot and told her she had been brave. A family with 2 young children waved at her from across the courtyard and smiled. Not everyone reached out. Some people avoided eye contact. Some pretended they had not seen anything. But enough people did. Enough people cared. And that made a difference. On Wednesday, Denise received an email from the property management company. They had been made aware of the incidents at the pool. They had reviewed the security footage and spoken with several witnesses. They wanted her to know that they took the matter seriously and that action had been taken. The man and his wife had been issued a formal warning. They were banned from the pool and all common areas for 60 days. If there was another incident, any incident at all, they would be asked to leave the complex. Denise read the email 3 times. She did not feel joy. She did not feel satisfaction. She just felt tired and relieved. It was not justice, not really, but it was something. It was acknowledgement. It was proof that what happened to her mattered. She later found out from Walter that this was not the first time the man had complained about a resident. He had filed reports on at least 3 other people over the past 2 years. All of them had been people who looked different from him. All of them had eventually moved out, but not Denise. Denise was staying. The following Saturday, she went back to the pool. Her heart was beating fast as she walked through the gate. She did not know what to expect. She did not know if people would stare at her or whisper about her or pretend she was not there. But when she stepped inside, something surprising happened. Walter was sitting on a lounge chair near the entrance. When he saw her, he smiled and raised his hand in a wave. Ruth was there too, reading her magazine under the same umbrella as always. She looked up and nodded at Denise. A warm, welcoming nod. The young couple from the second floor was splashing in the shallow end. They waved at her and called out hello. A man she had never spoken to before introduced himself and said it was nice to meet her. The pool felt different now. Not because anything had physically changed, but because something invisible had shifted. The silence had been broken. The community had woken up. Denise found a lounge chair near the deep end. She set down her bag and spread out her towel. Then she walked to the edge of the pool and slipped into the water. It felt like coming home. She swam her lap slowly, letting the water wash over her. She floated on her back and stared up at the sky. She let herself breathe. She let herself relax. She let herself belong. When she got out of the pool, an hour later, she noticed a young woman standing near the gate. She looked nervous. She was holding a towel and a book, glancing around like she was not sure if she was in the right place. Denise recognized that look. She had worn it herself not long ago. She walked over to the woman and smiled. "Hi there. Are you new to the building?" The woman nodded. "I just moved in last week. Unit 3C. Welcome to Willowbrook," Denise said. She meant it. "I am Denise. I live in 4B. If you ever need anything, just knock on my door." The woman's face relaxed. She smiled back, and it was a real smile. The kind that comes when someone makes you feel seen? "Thank you," she said. That is really kind." Denise grabbed her things and headed toward the gate. But before she left, she turned back one more time. The young woman had found a lounge chair and was settling in with her book. Walter was chatting with Ruth about something that made them both laugh. The kids in the shallow end were squealing with joy. This was her community now. Not perfect. Not without its problems. But hers. She had fought for her place here. She had spoken up when it would have been easier to stay quiet. And because of that, maybe the next person who walked through that gate would not have to fight the same battle. That was enough. That was more than enough. Denise walked back to her apartment with the sun on her face and peace in her heart. She did not know what tomorrow would bring. But she knew one thing for certain. She belonged here. And no one was ever going to make her feel otherwise again.